Americans watched in disbelief as one of their own was made Pope.
We never expected American, so it's a surprise.
I think I grabbed one of my friends like, Provost, American, it's American.
We were all like screaming, USA, USA. And if you had a flag, it would be immediately swiped from you.
The shock spreading around the world because the man who would become the next successor of St. Peter wasn't a papal possibility for many.
It was thought to be impossible, but why? Why was the world once against an American Pope? Michelle Powers with some of the answers.
We have team coverage, our reporters on the ground learning how this cardinal from the States was selected to be the next pontiff.
They were looking for someone who is a good shepherd, a good pastor who is close to the people.
And speaking with those who witnessed history.
A seminarian from the Diocese of Brooklyn had a front row seat to meet the new Pope here at the Vatican. I'm Katie Vasquez, and I'll have his story coming up.
Right now on Currents News, we get to know the 267th Pope as this Holy Father from the States begins his service to the world. Pope Leo XIV celebrating his first Mass on his first full day as the successor of St. Peter. His election was once thought to be unbelievable, even unthinkable, but now we have an American Pope. Hi, I'm Christine Persichetti. For centuries, many experts believed it was impossible, but hindsight is 2020, and now the world is saying if there ever was going to be one, Cardinal Robert Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, is the man for the mission. We have team coverage from Vatican City, bringing you the latest from that historic decision. Joining me now is Michelle Powers with reaction to the American Pope. Katie Vasquez is also there. She's introducing us to a Diocese of Brooklyn seminarian who ran to the square to see the white smoke. And Melissa Corsi is standing by, ready to talk to us about how this American Pope came to be. But we begin with Michelle Powers. Michelle, tell me, why did so many think that an American was a long shot?
Well, Christine, it's like you said, it's been a belief held for centuries. And at first it was because the Americans couldn't get to the conclave from the New World fast enough to even be a part of the vote. Then it became that the Americans are too much of a superpower to have someone on the throne of St. Peter. But Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, he defied those odds, and there's a number of reasons why.
The bells of St. Peter's Basilica welcoming the news. It's the dawning of a new day as the first ever American elected as the 267th Pope. Thousands in St. Peter's Square, Vatican City, and around the world have been anticipating the moment during the 2 days of the conclave. But many say they couldn't have imagined this.
We did so much research, and we were looking at all the top contenders, and we never expected an American, so it's a surprise.
The element of surprise spreading to the U.S.
Just got a text saying that he was the Pope. I thought, you gotta be kidding.
One childhood Chicago friend in disbelief that the person she knew as Robbie or Robert Prevost is now Pope Leo XIV. Leo making his debut address to the world's roughly 1.4 billion Catholics.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
133 cardinals took part in the election of the new pontiff. A plume of white smoke rising above the Sistine Chapel, signaling the selection to the world. His Holiness being cheered on from Catholics the world over.
There's so much hope. It's exciting. It's exciting to see, to be here, to know that now we have a Pope.
Let's also not forget that it is very likely that Cardinal Prevost was already on the Cardinals' radar because he had such a visible position.
Michelle, what reaction did you get from the crowd when they announced we have an American Pope?
So we ran down there all excited, Christine, and actually a number of people we asked, we were like, so it's the first American Pope. Are you guys excited about it? And a lot of them were like, non c'è male, American Pope. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have to find some Americans. And when we did get Americans, it was super exciting to hear what they had to say. Listen to this.
It's so cool to have someone in the throne of St. Peter that grew up like us and understands us.
So again, Christine, that was super great to find those kids in the square, and they felt like we did. Like, what an amazing historic moment that we get to be a part of.
So exciting. All right, we also know that he was a missionary. How much do you think that played a role?
Cardinal after cardinal for centuries have said that the true leader of this church should be a missionary. So I think that his time spent in Peru made him the perfect man for the job.
All right, Michelle, have a safe trip back home. We'll see you back in New York.
All right, thank you, Christine.
Pope Leo hit the ground running on his first full day as the Holy Father, celebrating his first Mass in the Sistine Chapel. The cardinals of the conclave, along with princes present in Rome, joined the Holy Father in prayer. Before pronouncing his homily in Italian, Pope Leo first greeted the Red Hats in English.
Through the ministry of Peter, you have called me to carry that cross and to be blessed with that mission. And I know I can rely on each and every one of you to walk with me as we continue as a church, as a community of friends of Jesus, as believers, to announce the good news, to announce the gospel.
Pope Leo's first Mass with his flock will be held in St. Peter's Square on Sunday, May 18th. To hear his first homily ever as Pope, you can listen to the full message on our website, currentsny.tv. The other American cardinals talked about their new Holy Father with reporters on Monday. Some of the prelates from the U.S. gave the faithful a behind-the-scenes look into his election and the moment he was announced to the world.
After one of the ballots, you carry your ballot to the front of the hall, you deposit it, and just say a few words in Latin. I walked back and I took a look at Bob, and because his name had been floating around. And he had his head in his hands. And I was praying for him because I couldn't imagine what happens to a human being when you're facing something like that. And then when he accepted it, it was like he was made for it.
Did you detect yesterday, you were there, we bishops were behind the drapes, but we could hear, the most ecstasy from the crowd is when the announcement was made, I bring you good news, habemus papam. We have a pope. Ecstasy. Enthusiastic applause. They didn't know who it was. As a matter of fact, they said, we don't really care. We have a pope. The chair is no longer empty. There will be a man at the window on Sunday. We have a pope. Papa is back.
Cardinal Dolan went on to say the prelates were excited to learn about the personality of this new pope. Joining us now to talk more about Pope Leo's exciting first day in Rome is Currents News' Melissa Corsi, who joins us from St. Peter's Square. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Christine.
So, Melissa, we just heard from some of the American cardinals talking and reacting to Pope Leo's election. Did they give any reasons as to why they picked Cardinal Robert Prevost?
Yeah, Christine, we got all the insight from what they were telling us. No, basically, New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan did say, though, that they were looking for someone who is a good shepherd, a good pastor who is close to the people. He also said that they wanted someone with a missionary heart, with a missionary zeal that went straight to his core, and they also found that in him. And then another thing that they had said is that they wanted someone who could really bring people together, not only the world, but also the Roman Catholic Church.
Absolutely. And as you know, we call the conclave an election, but it's important to note that a conclave process is different from, say, a U.S. presidential election with campaigns and debates, right?
Yes. In fact, Cardinal Wilton Gregory mentioned that at the press conference today as well. He said, I did not realize that a conclave was a continuation of the U.S. presidential election last year. And he's right. You know, as you said, Christine, it is completely different. There are no debates. There are no issues at hand. There's not even liberal or conservative candidates, even though we like to define them as that because that's the language that we're familiar with. But it's something that is much deeper. It's theological. It's pastoral. It's something that cannot even be explained in presidential candidate terms that we have.
Now, we saw Pope Leo performing some of his duties as the successor of St. Peter this morning. He celebrated a Mass in the Sistine Chapel, the first time the Holy Father had a Mass with the cardinals who elected him. What more did he have to say to them? He had to be grateful.
Yes, definitely. And Christine, this Mass is a beautiful moment for all of the cardinals to just be united, to be together before they all go their separate ways back home. And Pope Leo XIV, he gave a homily, a normal homily, reflecting also on the gospel about how to many Jesus has become a sort of Superman, someone that people just pray to when they need help, and how this has also led to, many wounds in society, and how many people have lost meaning for their life, and how also the crisis in the family, and how this is because of a lack of faith. But at the end of his homily, he was once again asking God for the grace to fulfill this new role, asking that he might step aside and that Christ may be glorified, and he once again invoked the Blessed Mother.
What was the reaction from the cardinals?
Oh, Christine, it was beautiful. At the end of the Mass, the whole Sistine Chapel just erupted in applause. It was something that you see all of the little red skull caps of the cardinals. It was just so joyful. And as Pope Leo XIV processed out, he gave them all his papal blessing. And as he was processing, he just kept putting his hands together, almost in thanks for each of them, almost making little bows. It was such a beautiful moment that we'll remember forever.
We are also praying for our new Holy Father, Pope Leo. Melissa, thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine.
Pope Leo grew up in the Chicago suburbs, the youngest of 3 boys. One of his brothers says the Holy Father wanted to be a priest from a very young age. In fact, a neighbor predicted he would one day become Pope. John Prevost also says his brother was conflicted in recent weeks about the possibility of becoming the leader of the Catholic Church, but said he'd be ready if God called.
It's something to be very proud of. It's an honor. But I think there's going to come a lot of responsibility here. He's going to focus his attention to the impoverished and the people who don't have a voice.
His pastoral philosophy was molded in part by his time in the south suburbs of Chicago. Last summer, while visiting his brother, then Cardinal Robert Prevost presided over Mass at his brother's parish church, St. Jude's. He met with parishioners there who today are celebrating and praying for the Holy Father. As Americans around the world celebrate the election of Pope Leo XIV, one seminarian from the States got to see the historic moment in person. The Queen's resident is currently studying for the priesthood in the Eternal City. He spoke exclusively with Currents News' Katie Vasquez about his experience at the Vatican. Katie.
Hi, Christine. Deacon Paulo Salazar finished up a long day of classes on Thursday, and he debated whether he should come to St. Peter's Square. But he says something inside his soul told him he needed to visit, and it's a moment he will hold on to forever.
I'm in a little disbelief that I got that close.
Deacon Paulo Salazar returns to St. Peter's Square on Friday, already trying to relive history.
This is where I was yesterday.
The seminarian from the Diocese of Brooklyn had 8 hours of classes at the Pontifical North American College on Thursday. Then he headed out with 10 other men in formation to St. Peter's Square, 10 minutes before the white smoke started.
It was a tremendous event, a very historical moment for me, a very emotional moment as a Catholic to witness.
So what was it like standing in the spot?
It was very emotional, being here with the thousands of other faithful.
When he heard the name of the new Holy Father, he couldn't contain his joy.
I think I grabbed one of my friends like, Provost, American, it's American. And then hearing Pope Leo XIV, it was just a very grace-filled moment.
Deacon Paulo says there was lots of prayers before they got their first look at the new pontiff, a man who they could already feel a connection to.
I think for us, there's an even greater fervor of just sort of sharing that American blood that runs through our bodies, and it was just a beautiful moment to experience it, and especially with it being an American Pope.
But this wasn't the first time the St. Joan of Arc parishioner met the American Pope. Then Cardinal Robert Prevost celebrated Mass at the seminary on Thanksgiving Day.
I think we sent him home with a couple slices of pumpkin pie. He may have liked it a lot. I got a chance to meet him before he was even Pope Leo XIV. And it just speaks to just his personality of just a really prayerful man, a very humble man, a really charitable man. And I'm just very much looking forward to how he is and how he'll reign as the Roman pontiff.
And Deacon Paolo hasn't stopped his prayers for the Holy Father.
I went to go to the tomb of St. Peter to pray for the Holy Father, asking Peter to intercede for him and to give him that strength that he had to lead the flock.
Deacon Paolo is eager to see how Pope Leo XIV leads the church as a seminarian spends the next month in Rome. The deacon will be ordained in the Diocese of Brooklyn in June, and he plans to follow the direction of the new pontiff as he becomes a priest. At the Vatican, Katie Vasquez, Currents News.
The shepherd of the Diocese of Brooklyn, Bishop Robert Brennan, marked the start of the new papacy with joy. Speaking with Currents News after the announcement, he called it an amazing and historic day for the Universal Church and for America.
You know what I love? He's a missionary. You know, we've had popes who've had missionary spirits in this past decade who encourage us to be missionary in nature, but he is an actual missionary. And now he's taking on a new mission. I mean, he kind of left a lot behind to go off and serve the poor in Peru. At the request of Pope Francis, he left doing what he loved doing to serve and help Pope Francis in his role, leading the dicastery for bishops. And now the Lord is asking him really to leave everything behind.
Absolutely.
And to be the Bishop of Rome, but the shepherd of the world.
Right. And he's only 69 years old. He's only been a cardinal for less than 2 years, I believe. What has your experience been with him?
It's a kind of a distant one. I mean, I know who he is. I think I've found him to be very good to me and to the people in Brooklyn and Queens. But my only interaction has been more in correspondence, the regular office correspondence that we would have. But he seems eager to step up and to be of help.
So many Catholics wanted somebody like Pope Francis. Cardinal Prevost long embraced marginalized groups like Pope Francis. He fights for the migrants and poor, the environment. What do you expect from this new papacy?
Well, I would look to his opening comments. And, you know, yes, with great admiration for Pope Francis, we're going to have to let him be his own man.
Yeah.
You know, but I know what you're saying. The themes that he's going to pick up are very similar. And of course, he collaborated with Pope Francis in those. But, you know, that greeting at the beginning and at the end, the beginning was, peace be with you. I bring to you the message of the risen Christ on the night of the resurrection. Pace convoi, I wish you peace. And then he closed by offering a word of peace and blessing. May peace be with you and with all your family. Those are just very human, very touching things. Yes, somewhat reminiscent of Pope Francis, of course, stopping in the middle of his talk and saying, why don't we say a Hail Mary? We've seen Pope Francis do that a few times. So I think you'll see some of that style, but also that consistency of the magisterium of the church, of the teaching, of going out into the fields.
Bishop Brennan shared his excitement about the new pope with the youngest Catholics in the diocese on Friday, speaking about his experience with then Cardinal Prevost during a mass with 8th graders across Brooklyn and Queens.
He's a good guy. I can vouch for that. We've exchanged some letters. He's a lot of good things about him. There are only two quarrels. They say he's a White Sox fan. He did go to the Cubs playoffs, I understand, but they say he's a White Sox fan. And the other thing, for a man from St. John's, he's a Villanova guy. But you know what? Those are friendly rivalries, right? Those are friendly rivalries.
Bishop Brennan told the kids they are on the threshold of a new era. Around the Diocese of Brooklyn, the papal excitement spread.
Pray on Leo, our Pope.
Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Emeritus Raymond Geppetto celebrating Mass for the new Holy Father at the Church of St. Mel's in Flushing. The parishioners praying that the new Pope may be a visible source and foundation of faith and unity within the Church. During his homily, the Church's pastor, Father Joseph Fonte, called the pontiff a gift from the Holy Spirit. All of New York was in a Vatican state of mind on Thursday. The iconic Empire State Building was lit up in gold and white to honor the election of Pope Leo XIV. The Midtown landmark also shone in gold and white lights after the passing of Pope Francis last month to honor the memory of the late pontiff. One school in Chicago turned the papal conclave into a real-life learning experience for its students. And as you can imagine, the kids were overjoyed when they learned that the cardinals in Vatican City elected a pope from their hometown. Currents News' Jenna McDermott reports.
Who would you vote for?
Before the big papal news, a conclave played out on a smaller scale.
It is time for our conclave to begin.
At Chicago's Our Lady of Mount Carmel Academy, 20 kid cardinals like Cameron Smith dressed the part and felt it too.
Wow, there's so many good options.
Just 2 days after kids chose 4th grader Augie Wilk in a mock conclave,
we did it!
Cardinals in Rome elected a pope with ties to home.
And from Chicago? You were all like screaming, USA, USA. And if you had a flag, it would be immediately swiped from you. Yeah.
The kids who took part in the mock conclave already sense a real connection to Pope Leo XIV.
We kind of know what it feels like. We know what it feels like to be a cardinal and shouting and screaming. He knows what it feels like to be Pope. Since I chose the name Augustine for the Pope in the mock conclave, and he chose to follow the order of St. Augustine. You'd want to be it, but you don't want to be. An interesting answer.
Taking part in a conclave is hard to top.
Yeah.
Now they can only hope a pope pays a visit. Jenna McDermott, Currents News.
That is the cutest thing, those costumes, amazing. That is this Currents News Update. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. As the world continues to excitedly welcome Pope Leo XIV, we want to take a look at some of the reactions around the globe to the first North American Pope.
Habemus Papam. Cardinalem Prevost.
American! What? It's the American! No, really? Leo the 14th.